Welcome to Blind Level Tech. I'm Jonathan Price.
I'm Evan Starnes.
And together, we're bringing you news, tech, and information about blind technologies.
Being blind doesn't mean you have to stop living.
We're going to show you just how possible it is to live the life you want. Hello, everybody. Jonathan Price here, the podcast producer for Audio Information Network of Colorado. This is my host, Evan Starnes. Evan, how are you doing, my friend?
I'm doing pretty all right. As of this recording, you might notice I sound a little bit nasally. Well, unfortunately, after 3 bloody years, I've contracted COVID. And so...
he's got the vids.
Yeah,
he's got the vids.
Man.
How's your experience been with COVID?
It's been interesting. It's basically just been like a nasty cold. I've had some weird minor brain fog though. So I'm normally kind of a forgetful person already as it is. I've probably got some undiagnosed ADHD or something like that, but it's just been times 4, for instance, I opened the Clubhouse app, which is a social media platform, and I was going to do something, and then I went and put it down, and I completely forgot I had the Clubhouse app open. And I was like, wait, why did I do this? So,
oh my gosh.
Yeah, so I've been having to take some time off and just recover. Unfortunately, my girlfriend got it too, and she got it much worse than I did, and she got the sore throat and stuff, and it's been way more of a recovery for her. But hopefully,
that's good.
Yeah, as of this recording, I'll be over this by Sunday. That would be ideal.
Nice. Yeah, it's when I had COVID back 2 years ago, I remember not much because there was I got it the day after Christmas. Actually, no, sorry, last year, not this last Christmas, but the year before. I got it the day after Christmas, and I don't remember what happened the next 2 weeks. It is such I know something happened. I remember bits and pieces, but there was not a whole lot. I was down for the count, man. It was tough. The cough and the physical fatigue of it was just no joke. And so, yeah, I don't. I'm glad that your symptoms weren't as bad, or they don't seem to be as bad. You're still trooping along with us, so I appreciate you and all the stuff you're doing.
My pitch has been off though. I have perfect pitch, and so any music that I've listened to for some reason has sounded a little different, higher pitched actually, which is weird, but the brain's interesting, isn't it?
It is, especially how we hear things. All that congestion really does affect not only your voice, but how you hear things, how you talk, how you feel. Yeah, it's just weird. The human body is just really amazing. It's just incredible.
Yeah.
You staying warm?
Oh yeah, definitely. Today it is snowy out. I think the last I checked, it was about 8 degrees. And depending on where you are, if you're in Colorado, it can get down to -9. So yeah. And if anybody's listening to this and it's cold, stay warm. There's no reason. If you don't have anything urgent to do, don't go outside. Stay inside, drink some hot chocolate or coffee. Just, take it easy.
Yeah, I was joking around and I was trying to trying to open my weather app, and I was laughing because it's almost so cold, my weather app froze.
Oh my gosh.
So bad.
Your weather app can't handle
so
it.
Funny. No.
Oh, that's funny.
It's currently, as I'm looking at it, and when we're recording this, when you're listening to it, this is 3 weeks ago. So just bear in mind, it's 5 degrees and it feels like -10. So it's a little chilly today. So I've got my coffee. Evan's got his drink, and we're just going to chill out and have some fun. And last week we talked about the differences between iPhones, Mac phones or Apple phones, and Android phones, and how much they cost, and the differences between them, good, bad, indifferent, or the other. Evan, can you kind of briefly tell us an overview of what we talked about, some of the goods and bads? Goods and bads? I don't know.
Yeah, goods and bads.
We'll go with that. We'll go goods and bads. Heavens,
All right.
I have the brain fog. Good Lord.
Yeah, man, I thought I did. so, so yeah, the nice things with the iPhone is that right out of the box, it's accessible, and you know, when you fire it up, you press your power button 3 times, you get voiceover, you can completely set up the phone without any help from anybody. And the other nice things about it are that there are a lot of good apps for the blind, including things like Seeing AI. And there's even on the iPhone, the pro level iPhones, the iPhone 12 Pro, 13 Pro, 14 Pro, all of those. There is LiDAR, and there's a detector feature where you can basically look for things like doors and people and just other things. So it really is good for blind people. And the negatives of the iPhone are the price point. The lowest you can get an iPhone brand new, at least, you can get the iPhone SE for $400. And that's the lowest you can go. And it just gets more expensive from there. And so that's really kind of the negative. And the other one is customizability. So with an Android, you can use pretty much whatever screen reader you want. That's available for Android, of course. And you can use a lot more voices, and can even do something called side loading, where you can put apps that are not available on Google's App Store on your phone. Sorry, I kind of went out of order here too. Good old brain fog, right?
No, you're good. You're good. You're good.
So I think that's a great segue into Android. And in most cases, if you buy an Android phone, especially like a Google Pixel, which if you listen to the last episode, we talked, I really endorsed the Pixel as a good starter Android. It normally is accessible out of the box when you set it up, but it's questionable. Sometimes it might not be, or sometimes you might not be able to turn TalkBack on, and you might need sighted assistance setting it up for the first time. And but the positives about Android, obviously, as I said, are the customizability and the flexibility. It's basically, if you use a Windows PC, basically your Android phone is like a mobile version of a PC. I mean, you can do things like play, video game emulators. You can, obviously, as I mentioned, sideload apps. You can plug in a thumb drive if you want to, if you took a bunch of photos and you want to just copy them from your phone to your thumb drive, you can do that. And when you plug your phone into your computer, you have access to everything on the phone, including your music, your ringtones, and you could do whatever you want with them. Unfortunately, with like the iPhone, you have to use something like iTunes on the PC, or you have to use the Finder on the Mac to be able to move files to and from it. And it's a little bit more of a pain, but unless you're a super duper advanced user, you won't really need to worry too much about that.
Yeah. Yeah, that's cool. So and you were just saying the positives of the Google Pixel or like the Android, most of them come.
Yeah, most of them come
like accessible out of the box.
Yeah, most of them, keyword. And the other positive too is pricing and diversity of phone brands. So there are literally hundreds of phone brands, from things like Nokia to Samsung to Google to Motorola. And that means you can get an Android phone for a good one for $100, and you'll be able to use it. It'll do the job. It might not be the most enjoyable experience for you, but if you just got a smartphone and you're on a very tight budget, it'll get the job done.
Yeah, it'll get the job done. So last week we talked about phones, and as probably the most important piece of tech you will need right out of the box, as a blind person. And this week, what is the second most important piece of tech you will need as a blind person?
A computer.
So last week we started with the iPhone, and this week I'm going to flip the script, and I'd like to start with PC first. There's a lot of things that are super cool about the PC, and let's talk about some of the positives and negatives. Let's start with the negatives first. What are some of the negatives about having a PC?
some of the negatives are it's a lot more of a learning curve if you have never used a PC before, because there's a lot more options out there. You know, you don't just have one, for instance, screen readers. You don't have one screen reader. You have a bunch of screen readers to pick from. And each screen reader has its own set of key commands that you have to learn. And, you know, it might take a little bit of time to get used to. And the other thing, too, is that it is compatibility. Sometimes, you know, you might run into issues if you just got like a new device with getting it to work, you know, when you plug it in. And it doesn't integrate as well with other devices. Like if you have an iPhone, it won't integrate as well with it. And it's kind of a bit of a bummer.
It kind of goes back to being in that, I guess, Apple environment or Apple, whatever ecosystem. I said it was last week. Ecosystem, thank you. Yeah, it goes into that ecosystem of, you know, you have Amazon and Alexa and you have all those types of things. Does it work really well with PC? Like the Alexa and PC, do they get along?
They used to, but it's depending on the computer you have, it can either work or it won't work at all. And at least some computers such as Lenovo's do come with Alexa, which is kind of cool. But if they don't, Microsoft or Windows has a voice assistant called Cortana, and that's basically kind of its method of accessing Alexa. And it's just it's hard to get set up, really.
So it sounds like there's a lot of trial and error, especially with like the screen readers and all that kind of stuff.
Yeah, there is. However, I will say, if you have been a PC user, you know, your whole life and that's all you've used, seriously, can't recommend it enough. It will be less of a learning curve for you. But yeah, if you've never touched a computer in your life, it's going to be a learning curve.
Yeah, definitely. Is there a particular screen reader that you like for the PC? This kind of goes into the positives. Is there a particular one that you like better for PCs than others?
I use one called NVDA, Non-Visual Desktop Access. It's a free screen reader that can be downloaded from the website nvaccess.org. And it's pretty cool because it's open source, which basically means that you can do whatever you want. They have things like add-ons, so you can add additional voices and additional functionality to it. And it's very capable. And so that's the screen reader I use personally.
Nice. And what are some of the other screen readers that you can use with PCs?
There is Narrator, which is the one that comes in, like built into Windows. Now, if you're using Windows 10 or later, Narrator is actually a really solid screen reader. And if you're not comfortable installing stuff, you know, it'll get the job done. And of course, it'll be the screen reader that you need to fire up when you first set up your computer. And the nice thing is like you can turn it on with a simple keyboard shortcut, which is Control Windows Enter, and it'll immediately start talking. And so that's what I use, or that's what I like to recommend to people, especially if they just bought a PC. Play with Narrator.
Okay.
Now, the downsides of Narrator, depending on what you're using, are the voices. There's really only a few voices. Now, if you're using Windows 11, you'll have access to higher quality voices, but those higher quality voices are also kind of slow. And, you know, they sound great, but if you're a really fast, proficient computer user, you're going to have a bit of a hard time with the speed. And it's a little different to use than like other screen readers like NVDA or JAWS. It has its own set of keyboard commands, and you can customize them, but it's kind of a pain to do that. But like I've said before, this is kind of the theme today. It gets the job done.
It gets the job done. Whatever gets the job done. And then you said there was another one, JAWS?
Yeah,
how does JAWS compare with NVDA and Narrator?
JAWS really, for any blind person out there, is the most well-known screen reader. It's a very, very, very capable screen reader. In fact, it is specifically made to work well with things like Microsoft Word and Outlook. And you can customize JAWS to work with each application on your computer in a very specific way. So if I wanted my speech to slow down when I open Microsoft Word, I could basically set JAWS up to do that. You also get a lot more voice options available for free to download. And
Sweet.
And it has like a whole bunch of really good audio tutorials that come with it built in. And, it's they're done really well. And so if you've never even really used JAWS or a computer, they'll really show you how to get started. So that it's a lot more of a hands-on experience. Unfortunately, JAWS has a cost associated with it. It used to be almost $1,000, but they do have a subscription plan. I know, really expensive just to be able to use a bloody computer. And that price doesn't even include the computer. That was just for the screen reader. They do have a subscription plan now, which is kind of a new thing, but it's about $100 a year. So it's still, a little expensive. So yeah, that's kind of the downside of JAWS. And compared with NVDA, there's just a lot more involved as far as customizing it and getting it suited to your needs.
Yeah, it kind of sounds like NVDA would be the way to go for a lot of people who are trying to, if they like to customize their stuff, and it depends on the user, I guess. But because some people are going to want to customize the snot out of it, and then others are going to want something that's pretty cookie cutter, straight out of the box, that they only have to learn one thing. And it may be that NVDA is a better option later when they figure out, I really wish this particular key command would do this instead of this. You know what I'm saying?
Exactly.
So some more positive things about a PC when people are deciding between either a Mac or a PC.
So some more positive things there are a lot more. It's a lot easier to get programs for a PC, as in you can go to pretty much any website that's safe, and you can download a program. And then you just run the little installer, and it will install it to your computer, and you can immediately begin using it. And the key commands when it comes to using a PC are a lot easier for a keyboard user. It's a lot of you could do a lot of one-handed key commands, and they make a lot more sense. Those are really the big positives.
So one of the big positives for me is, and this is also a negative on Mac, which we're going to dive into in a second, but the cost for a PC is so much cheaper than a Mac. I mean, you can get a PC for a couple $100, even, a desktop, or because I think what you use a desktop Mac with no screen, because it's all audio to you.
That's true.
And, using a PC, you may not even have to have a laptop with a screen. You may be able to get away with what Evan does and just use the desktop version or whatever it is that, that works for you. Some people just use tablets. Some people just use iPads. And so I think that is a huge driver when it comes to, picking PC over Mac. I know we were talking to Penn, a couple of weeks ago, and she was talking about, what's the difference between getting it has the screen readers on Mac. Have they improved? Have they, and we're still trying to help her figure that out. And so moving into the Mac side now, we just talked about the negative being the price. What are some more of the negatives about the Mac?
Some of the more negative things are it's a little bit more challenging to get programs on the Mac, as in you can, if you download a program from the Mac App Store, that's easy. You just install it and it's ready to go. But if you have to go onto a website to install a program, you run into a lot of things like Macs are very secure, which is a positive, but because of that, it's a lot harder to install that program because you have to basically say, this, I know what I'm doing, and this program isn't going to harm my
Right.
computer. And then
there's a lot of permissions on a Mac that you have to have, and if you're not an administrator and you accidentally get logged into the guest, it's a
you're in
pain.
deep trouble there. And then there's not as much as far as like accessibility programs on the Mac. I mean, there are some as far as like not screen readers, but things like PDF viewers and or maybe accessible games. And that's another thing. If you're a gamer and you want to play games, don't buy a Mac because there's really not a lot out there for you. And yeah, a lot of programs on the Mac or a lot of stuff, they really want you to install it from the Mac App Store, but a lot of like specialized programs aren't necessarily available on the Mac App Store, unfortunately.
Not to mention, they still come with a cost, even if you download them from them. I mean, in my experience, I think Windows has more free programs than Mac does. That's just an observation that I've seen. I will say this. One of the other negatives you had mentioned a couple weeks ago was a voiceover for the Mac is more like an intricate screen reader.
Yes.
Is that still a negative, or can you describe more about what that means?
Sure. So yeah, VoiceOver is definitely more of an intricate screen reader. A lot of the key commands are two-hand key commands. So, and there's a lot of you'll become very familiar with interacting and not interacting with an item. So if you go to like your settings and you go into a little dialogue, you have to interact with that dialogue to be able to change anything inside of it, if that makes sense. And yeah, a lot of those commands are, you have to push 3 or 4 keys down to be able to get that, to be able to invoke that command. And VoiceOver doesn't necessarily come with a lot of, you can't really, you can add some outsourced, like some extra functionality that it doesn't have, but it's a lot harder to get that set up as far as like, if you needed something like optical character recognition to be able to read like an inaccessible PDF or something. They're trying to add that, but it's not great. So you're going to need something like a little tool called VOCR, and then that has its own setup associated with it.
Right. Yeah, there's quite a few things that you still need to add to the Mac to make it fully accessible, or I mean,
fully usable,
because it fully usable because one of the pros is that it does come accessible out of the box, and it's even in the setup screen that it's like one of the first screens that you come to when you're setting it up is, do you want this to be accessible? And what are some more of the positives?
That's a great segue into the positives. So yeah, when you first get a Mac and you fire it up, I don't know if they do this anymore, but usually you would, if a few minutes after the computer turned on, you'd get this screen that says, Mac OS has a screen reader called VoiceOver, and this is a talking screen, basically. So yeah, your computer would begin talking, and it would say, if you'd like to turn on VoiceOver, press Option plus F5. And immediately, you could turn on VoiceOver and begin setting up your Mac accessibly without any help from anybody. And the other cool thing with VoiceOver is when you turn it on, for the first time, you'll get this really cool deep voice that'll say like, welcome to VoiceOver. VoiceOver speaks descriptions of items on the screen and can be used to control the computer using only your keyboard. And then you can hit the V key and it'll actually bring you into this little interactive tutorial, and it'll show you all about those gestures that I was talking about, all the funky, intricate key commands and how to use them. And it's about a 30-minute tutorial, but yeah, it'll get you started with the basics. But if you want to skip that, you can hit the space bar. Now, be warned, if you hit the space bar, anytime you turn on VoiceOver in the future, you're not going to get that dialogue and it'll just turn on. So very important to listen to that dialogue and pay attention.
Yeah, I guess really the only time you would want to skip through that is if you bought a new Mac that you've upgraded
used.
And so that's pretty awesome. Are there any more positives about the Mac?
Absolutely. if you're in the Apple ecosystem and you have an iPhone and you have like the AirPod earbuds or headphones, all of that stuff just works together with your Mac. So for instance, if I'm on my, Mac and I get a call on my phone, my Mac will start ringing and I can see who's calling and I can even take the call on the Mac, which is pretty cool. And I have an Apple Watch, and you can use that Apple Watch to unlock your computer. So if you're wearing your watch and you open up your MacBook, your watch will do this little click and then immediately you're logged in. And if you have AirPods, when you're using your Mac and you put those AirPods in, you'll see this little thing that'll say, like, do you want to connect, Evan's AirPods Pro or whatever, depending on what you have. And then, you can immediately just start using the AirPods on your Mac. And the nice thing is if you've connected your AirPods to your iPhone, this is a specific thing to AirPods, by the way, that it syncs that to your iCloud. So it'll work with your iPhone, your iPad, your watch, your Mac. And that's really the big thing, is integrated. It's all integrated.
Absolutely. And the funny thing is that when you have so many of the devices, I think I said this last week, was that if you have, you have your Mac Tower, your MacBook Pro, your laptop, maybe your desktop or whatever it is, then you have your iPhone, your watch, your iPad, maybe your Apple TV. If you have all of those going at the same time, there's a very real possibility that when you get a phone call, everything will go off at the same time, which is pretty fun and pretty annoying at the same time. But at least you know that you can get, phone calls and messages from anybody. The only problem is that people know that you have that. And so they're going to know that everything is going off when they're calling you. So, it's just one of those fun things. I do love all the new, like, handoff features. And, when you're working on something, you can transfer it from computer to computer. I know for me, I have a 2009 desktop cheese grater Mac that I have upgraded to the 9s, and I'm still running all of my big programs, my software, Logic. I don't do any photo or video editing, but I can run a lot of applications and a lot of really heavy processing because I've upgraded so many times. And I love that integration. Yeah, absolutely. And PCs have that same ability too. They're cheaper. You can get pretty decent specs, in relation to what Mac does. My longevity of a Mac, if you know how to work on them, they will last you a long time. I think mine is 15 years old, 2009. Yeah, something like that. And it's still going. I mean, I have had no problem. I just upgraded the graphics card. This last week, I got a brand new mouse, and it's a MX Master 3, and it has so many different buttons and key controls that I can program to specific applications and to specific windows. So, like in Logic, my right and left click buttons do something a little bit different than they do in my browser window. And so it's really cool to customize those things. You can do that for PC as well, but it's just one of those features of the mouse. Anywho, with Mac, I have noticed that I'm able to keep my Mac going a lot longer than with a PC. And there's a lot more viruses, at least in my experience, for PCs, and more businesses have PCs. I think a lot of businesses are starting to transition to Mac. I don't know that this is necessarily a blind thing specific, but it is something to note that if you do have a PC, you are a little bit more susceptible to viruses, just because Mac has that, like what Evan was saying, the security protocols are really ridiculous to a good point, but then borderline of annoyance. And so there's things like Clean My Mac, which is a really, really great a Mac cleaner. So go get that if you'd like to.
It does cost money. I think it's about $40-$50, but yeah, I have it, and it's a great little program, and it's cool because it even has sounds when you're cleaning your computer. It makes different chimes when it's doing certain things. And
yep, I love it. Yep.
But yeah, it'll keep your Mac running in tip-top shape.
Mm-hmm. Yep, absolutely. And it'll find the big files, and PC has their same versions of all this kind of stuff too. So it's not like the Mac is the only thing that's doing this. longevity wise, for me, it's truly like the Mac as a hardware unit stands up a little bit more robust and longer than a PC does. That's just my experience. That's been, and if you're doing audio, it's people will argue
it's the way
that
to go.
PCs are just, it is. And I use Mac, been using it for 20 years, and it's so much easier to use. It's so much easier to use for me.
Yep.
So yeah. Okay, Evan, I'm going to turn it over to you with our tech tip of the week.
In this week's tech tip, we're going to talk about startup sounds. Now, what exactly is a startup sound? Well, it's basically a little chime that your computer makes when you turn it on. And here's something very important to know. If you have a Mac that you just bought within the past couple of years, you'll already be familiar with that startup sound as it is on by default. However, starting with Windows 10, if you're on a PC, unfortunately that sound is disabled and you have to enable it. So we're going to show you both on Windows and Mac how to enable and disable that startup sound. All right, starting with Windows, I have a Windows laptop right here that has been completely shut down. What I'm going to do is I'm going to turn on this computer, and then you'll eventually, when it's finished booting up, hear this pleasant little chime. Now, something important to know is that if you're using Windows 10 or earlier, this chime is going to be different. I'm using Windows 11, which is the latest version of Windows. So I'm going to go ahead and turn this on, and in a few seconds, you should hear this pleasant little startup sound if all is well. And it's ready to go. So now what I'm going to do is I'm going to log in. Now that sound actually is NVDA, the screen reader that I use. And notice how fast my speech is. For the sake of this demonstration, I will slow that speech down. So I'm going to go ahead and log in, and then I will show you how to turn on that sound. All right, so I've gone ahead and logged in, and I'm sitting on my desktop now. The speech on my screen reader is going to sound a little robotic. However, if you use the JAWS for Windows screen reader, you'll be pretty familiar with this voice. Now, the easiest way to get into the screen where you can turn the sound on is to hit your Windows key plus the letter R, which will open the Run dialog.
Run dialog, type the name of a program, document, or internet resource, and Windows will open it for you.
So what I'm going to do is I'm going to type the word Control, CONTROL. And then I'm going to hit Enter. It's going to bring us into the control panel. And then you're immediately in a search box. And in that search box, you want to type the word sound. Now, I have key echo turned off, so I'm typing and you're not hearing any letters that I'm typing. And that is not, that by default, whenever you type a letter, it will read any letter you type on the keyboard. So I type sound, and then I'm going to hit Enter. And then you want to hit the Tab key until you hear Change System Sounds.
Link and change sound card settings link. Change system sounds link.
There you go. And now you hit Enter.
Sound dialog. Property page.
This is actually a whole little window where you can change not only the sounds your computer makes, but you can add some new ones. So if you wanted to have a sound whenever a program opened, you could add it there, but that's kind of advanced. We just want to turn on and off the startup sound. So we're going to tab over until we hear Play Windows Startup Sound.
Save as. Delete button. Grab. Play Windows Startup Sound. Checkbox checked. Alt plus T.
Now notice it's checked already. So by default,
Not checked.
it's off. So to obviously to enable it, you want to press the space bar when you hear Play Windows Startup Sound. And that's how you know it's on. Then you want to tab over to OK.
A button. Control panel.
And your Windows computer, whenever you fire it up, should now produce a pleasant little startup sound. And now we're going to jump over to Mac. And as you'll be able to tell, it's going to be a lot quicker to turn this sound on. All right, so jumping over to the Mac side of things, demonstrating this on a MacBook Air. And this is the latest, well, sadly, it's not the latest anymore, but it was the latest and greatest M1 MacBook Air. from 2020. So by default, obviously, when you turn on your Mac, it will play this startup sound. Now, the difference between Mac and Windows is when you turn on your Windows computer, it takes a few seconds to play that startup sound. However, on the Mac, immediately when you press that power button, it's going to make the sound. And then it'll take a few seconds for the login window to come up. And so for the ease of this demonstration, I have turned on VoiceOver so it will start talking when we are ready to log into our computer. So depending on the age of your MacBook, by the way, when you open the lid, it might fire up. If it doesn't fire up when you open the lid, press the power button. I'm going to go ahead and do that right now. The lid is already open, and you'll hear this pretty cool little startup sound. And now the computer is booting up. And pretty soon, VoiceOver will come on.
Login system dialog 11:13. Your password is required to enable Touch ID. Secure edit text as keyboard focus. Enter password. Text field.
And I'm going to leave that in the recording because I'm running the latest version of macOS Ventura, and there is an occasional bug where sometimes VoiceOver might come on and it'll sound lower pitched and or broken, which is a little weird. And hopefully they fix that in a future update. So I'm going to go ahead and log in, and then I will show you how to turn that startup sound on or off. All right, so I've gone ahead and logged in, and I'm sitting on my Finder now. And so if you want to turn this sound on or off, it's pretty easy to do if you know how to use VoiceOver on the Mac. So what you want to do is go into your sound settings. Now, we love our shortcuts here on Mac, so there's a really easy way to get into that little dialog. And that way is by pressing the Option key, pressing and holding it, and then pressing the volume up key on the keyboard. And if you're on a MacBook, that key is immediately left of the power button on the top row. So we're going to do that right now.
Some settings, appearance, window, table, sound, selected as keyboard focus.
So now we're in the sound settings. Now to turn on and off the sound, you're going to use VO, your VoiceOver keys, which are Control and Option, and your right arrow, and you're going to find a startup sound option.
Scroll splitter, sound, scroll area.
Actually, before you do that, you have to interact with that scroll area, which can be done by pressing Control, Option, Shift, down arrow.
Scroll area.
And if you listen to our previous podcast, you can see exactly what I mean by a bunch of intricate keyboard gestures. I mean, there's a lot to it. So now that we're in this little scroll area, we're going to voice over right arrow until we hear the startup sound option.
Alert sound, on. Alert play sound effects through. Selected alert volume, minimum volume 100, maximum play sound on startup. Play sound on startup. Switch.
And you want to find that switch. Now, by default, you can hear it was on. So if I press Control Option Space, that turns it off. However, I want it on. If you were to turn it off anytime you start up your Mac, it just starts up silently. And if you're blind, it's kind of hard to tell if your machine's fired up until VoiceOver starts talking. So I'll go ahead and turn that on. And there you have it.
All right. And that was our tech tip of the week. Thanks a lot, Evan. I appreciate that. Yeah, it's interesting. Sometimes I've had my chime disabled from my Mac, and I have to go and reset the NVRAM, and so it's kind of annoying if it gets disabled. But
yeah.
Anywho, so a couple of things to announce as we wrap up this show. We do have on May the 4th, we have Diane Shore, Deeds. Deeds, if you're listening, a shout out to you. She is coming and doing a concert with PBS, and we're doing an event called Music in the Dark. And this is a fundraising event for AINC, as we are a nonprofit. So if you would like to donate to AINC, you can go to aincolorado.org, and we have information on our site as to where you can donate. But that event will be a lot of fun. It'll be Deeds and two other groups, I believe. We're trying to iron out some of the details, get a set list, and it'll be a lot of fun. It'll be really cool. We'll have people that are, everybody will be blindfolded if they wish to be, but it's a way for you to experience music in such a way that's not the bells and whistles and lights, and it's just listening to really, really good music. And so I know I will be there. Evan, are you going to be there?
Yeah, I plan to be there. And, if they allow me, I might even do some recording of the event, audio guy and all.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
There you go. That'll be a lot of fun.
Mm-hmm.
Evan, any last words for you?
Well, I'd love to remind everybody, if you're listening to this podcast on Apple Podcasts, leave a good 5-star rating and write a review with your thoughts. It's really important, and it helps push our podcast out to people and to new listeners. And if you're listening on Spotify, you have to have at least listened to an episode once, an entire episode, and then you can leave us a 5-star rating there. So yeah, please rate and review. It is extremely more important than you know.
Yes, absolutely. And we want to get this word out. We want to make sure that we are a cornerstone for the blind tech community and the blind information community. We want to get as many people informed about different products and services as we possibly can. So that would go a long way. All right. Well, thank you guys so much for joining us. Have a great week, Evan. We'll talk to you soon.
All right.